Hello and welcome to the TADAT podcast. My name is Annette Schmitz from the TADAT Secretariat. When applied by most administrations, TADAT reveals the strength of a tax administration's performance against a series of indicators. Where administrators score a less desirable rating, for example, a C or a D, they may concentrate on the area responsible for the activity. For example, a D score in timeliness of disputes resolutions may cause the administration to focus on the dispute resolution process, how disputes are being resolved, rather than on aspects of the administration such as where the disputes originate and why. This myopic focus can potentially result in improvement to the scoring in future assessments, but may not provide the effectiveness of the administration. Improve the effectiveness of the administration. As the TADAT has matured, we are beginning to witness more and more administrations looking beyond the scores to see if the scores are symptoms of broader, more pervasive systemic issues, for example, a lack of horizontality. In today's podcast, we will hear from two tax administrations that have been subject to TADAT assessments, the Tax Administration of Jamaica twice, and the Canada Revenue Agency through a self-assessment. Both will provide us with the experience and give us a glimpse beyond the TADAT scores. Hosting today's podcast is Duncan Onduru. Duncan is the Executive Director of the Commonwealth Association of Tax Administrators, CATA, based in London. Before joining CATA, he served as Senior Tax Manager with PricewaterhouseCoopers. He has a wealth of experience in tax policy and administration, having served for several years at Kenya's Ministry of Finance and Kenya Revenue Authority. He holds a master's degree in economics from the University of Nairobi and an LLM in international tax from Thomas Jefferson School of Law in San Diego. A warm welcome to you, Duncan, and thank you for hosting today's session.
Many thanks, Annette, for the kind introduction. I will be the host for this today's session, and I'll be joined, as Annette has said, by two distinguished speakers. With me today is Mr. Geoff Truman and Mr. Hank William, who will be sharing with us some insight from their experience, the experiences of their tax administration. So Geoff Truman was appointed as Assistant Commissioner of Legislative Policy and Regulatory Affairs Branch of the Canada Revenue Agency. He has also been representing the Canada Revenue Agency on the OECD Committee of Fiscal Affairs Inclusive Framework on Base Erosion and Profit Shifting BEPS since 2017, and has been the Canadian delegate for CATA since 2019. Prior to his appointment at the Canada Revenue Agency, Geoff was General Director of Tax Policy Branch at the Department of Finance since 2013. Geoff began his career with the Government of Canada in 1992 when he joined the Department of Finance. Since that time, he has held several increasingly senior positions at the department as an economist and as an executive in the area of personal sales and business taxation, including a 2-year deployment to the European Commission in Brussels. Geoff, a warm welcome to you to this TADAT podcast, and thank you for joining us today. Our second panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Hank William. William joined the Tax Administration of Jamaica since 2015 in the capacity of the Deputy Commissioner General with the responsibility for strategic services and a member of the Tax Administration of Jamaica's executive management team. Hank has an oversight for strategic and corporate planning, development of tax compliance program, project management, and modernization of all core tax administration functions. He has an overall responsibility for the deployment of the Department of Tax Business Strategy, providing technical expertise in the execution of the strategy, as well as monitoring the performance of the authority. While playing a critical leadership role in the delivery of the strategies of TAJ, Mr. Williams serves as the TADAT focal point for the Tax Authority of Jamaica. Hank, it's a great pleasure to have you with us today, and thank you for joining me. I would like to invite our audience to submit their question through our live chat on the YouTube, or alternatively, you can email us at our podcast@tadat.org. And now, without further delay, I would want to give our speakers the chance to share with us their experiences. And I will start with the Tax Administration of Jamaica. Mr. Hank, TAJ has in fact had two assessments, one in 2015 and another one in 2021. Could you just describe the rationale for volunteering to have two assessments done and your experience with those assessments? Over to you, Mr. Hank.
Thank you very much, Duncan. And I also want to express gratitude on behalf of Tax Administration for the privilege to be on this podcast this morning and to share our experiences. I'm going to do a brief presentation which will address your question, Duncan, as well as to provide further insights into our experiences. So Tax Administration Jamaica, as you have rightly indicated, have done two assessments, and I'll give a summary of the first to explain to you the rationale for the first, the second also, as well as some of the major initiatives that came out of the first, and what we're going to do with respect to the second assessment that we have received. So Tax Administration has done two assessments. The first was against the background that in 2010, the organization had done a series of reform activities, primarily towards strengthening the administration. That include legislative changes. It also included the matter of the organization becoming a semi-autonomous revenue authority, or legislative framework was strengthened to support the collecting of third-party information. We were at the cusp of putting in place a new revenue administration system to strengthen our business processes. And we had done significant steps in terms of strengthening the skill as well as professionalism of the organization. The second was done in 2021, which have been 6 years after we have completed the first. We thought that we'd have mature enough, given that we have put the framework in place for modern tax administration in terms of the whole matter of the integrated system, the whole matter of self-assessment was strengthened in terms of business processes, and we had ensured that we would have taken on the recommendations to a large extent of what was in the first assessment. So the second assessment was done in 2015, in October to be exact. We hosted a mission. The aim of it was to assess in an objective way, the strengths and weaknesses of the tax administration and to help us to set reform priorities as we transform into a semi-autonomous administration, and also to look at some related activities to put on the agenda, because we support the theme of this podcast that we should go beyond the scores. So in light of that, we took the scores in terms of the strengths and the strengths. The strengths were that we thought that in terms of information, we had that very extensive in terms of what we had, and we had competent staff available and agents. Our internal and external oversight mechanism was robust with respect to the function of the organization. We had a plan in place for compliance, which treats with looking at risk-based compliant management, and we had subordinate plans to support that in terms of the roadmap for performance. Again, we were able to estimate with the support of our international development partners, the estimation of the tax gap, which again would have helped us determine where is it that we need to strengthen in regards to compliance. Again, the weaknesses were very much highlighted and we're happy for them. We believe that the data integrity was a major one. It had very inaccuracies were highlighted. And in terms of the matter of compliance management suffered in that regards. Online filing rates were low. And this is exacerbated by the weak compliance effort that was displayed as we're changing our systems. Again, there was a large number of administrative assessments, of administrative issues, the assessments, and we had a large stock of objections, and the rate within which caused a lot of concern. There was also delays in terms of the matter of the determination or the harmonization of our systems, and this hampered compliance to a large extent. There were delays also in the payment of VAT refunds, and this compromised the integrity of the VAT regime, which we had worked very hard in 1991 to put in place. Again, also, we were asked to look at the matter of compliance behavior because the measurement that we're using need to be revisited. So in light of that, we use the findings from it to inform our strategic journey going forward, because the findings from it, we built it into our 2015 to 2016 determination of the medium-term priorities for the organization, which would have allowed us to have a strategy in place for 2018 at that time, 19. And what we're able to do during that time was to treat with all the nine performance outcome areas. First, we put in place actions to deal with the integrity of the taxpayer database, primarily in terms of developing programs to treat with registration, as well as deregistration and registration verification, because the revenue administration system had the capacity that we have put in place to treat with that. We are also able to identify third-party sources, which would help us in terms of knowing our unregistered taxpayer database, because we had on our books over 200 sources that we could have treated at the time. Also, when we looked at risk management, we were at a place where we were able to get the risk document plans. We were able to get those signed off on, so we were able to strengthen our capacity there. We are also able to strengthen our risk management in terms of the risking of our taxpayers. Our capabilities that strengthened. Now that the discovery model, analytics modeling arrays are being used, we'll also be able to prepare a register with the key indicators that we have found from the compliance activities that we carried out. We're also able to strengthen the national compliance programs by strengthening the risk base, and also the matter of business continuity plans. Those were in draft. We're able to have those approved at the level of the board, and we're also able to put in place a risk management committee. Additionally, as in terms of our experience with it, also in terms of the matter of supporting voluntary compliance, we're able to put in place the recommendations coming out of a customer satisfaction survey. We're all able to strengthen our relationship with our key partners. For example, the matter of the Insurance Association of Jamaica. We're able to expand on the range of information that was able to explain the obligation, the entitlement of the various taxpayers. We're able to update our citizens' status. Our whole customer service model was dealt with. And also we're able to deal with the timely declaration of filing in terms of the filing rate, on-time filing. Again, we put in place mandatory filing, the know your taxpayer concept, we built out that. And again, also we strengthened the risk management to deal with stop filers, identification, the matter of missing obligation and tax arrears collection. Interestingly also, as we looked at the matter of accurate reporting on declarations, we're able to match our taxpayers. We're able to issue, based on the legislative framework that we had strengthened, the publication of private and public rulings for our core tax type. And as we moved along the trajectory, the matter of effective dispute resolution, we're able to separate the objections from the audit, which was a major finding coming out of the assessment. We also put in place a special program with the support of the Revenue Appeals Division to do backlog cases. And most importantly, we're able to address the matter of the forecasting surrounding effective revenue management, and also treated refunds in keeping with the government policy to inform its fiscal management. And we're able to prioritize refunds, and we publish our national compliance plan. And we also were able to put the mechanism in place of ISO certification of the organization as we deal with accountability. Again, coming out of that, 6 years later, as I indicated, we did a similar assessment. And this one, as the mission team rightly told us when they came on September 13th that their mission was to put us at a place where we go beyond this course. We could look at medium-term strategies. And again, the core principle was in terms of the mission to able to provide us with an objective assessment of the strength and weakness of the tax administration based on all the changes, and also to assess the progress that we had made in the last assessment, and also use other initiatives that we have done to inform the ongoing reform activities. Again, happy to say that we have made significant strides on the POAs. 69% of them had seen an increase. We declined on 9, and we kept 12 constant. So in essence, we did pretty well in terms of the strides that we have made. Again, just here for the record, I just highlight some key things that we have seen. The matter of the risk management. The team was very much pleased that we had embraced it in the organization, and the culture was healthy. It was bought in from the apex or the senior management. The raise provided a very robust way of managing our data. And again, it formed the backbone of our compliance activities. Again, voluntary compliance was seen as one of our strengths. Our engagement of taxpayers was seen was extensive and multifaceted, as well as the matter of the dispute resolution. Again, they saw the process was independent, as the finding that they asked us to do in 2011, or matter of the audit quality assurance around in our audits was seen, that was put in place. And our internal and external audit program in terms of oversight, again, was seen as A, and also in terms of revenue management. The first, since we had done our TADAT, we had met the revenue target, and the cross-matching was seen as critical also. Our weakness, again, we needed to deal with the filing rates. Those are dropped, especially in the COVID. And there was a growth in terms of the matter of disputes needed to be dealt with. The tax debt was seen as something I need to look on, and the management of the whole operational risks and our GCT refund, we need to look on that. The tax gap needed to be done, and there needs a mechanism to strengthen in terms of our interactions with our revenue appeals division. Our annual reports, although they were prepared, they were not published at the time despite Central Ministry of Finance, and we had in place a multi-year strategic plan, and the raise system needed to be integrated in the Ministry of Finance. And in terms of how we have seen it, we have used the findings by way of a very excellent post-TADAT mission was conducted by Paulo Pays and his team, which has provided us with some very good insights into how we can move beyond this course to have a medium-term direction, which will be incorporated in our strategic plan for the year coming up. So in terms of how we would have been motivated, one, to do the assessment, and two, our experience coming out of it in terms of the findings. These are what I would have submit in this presentation as the way in which we intend to use the scores and the experience. Thank you very much. Over back to you, Duncan.
Thank you so much, William, for taking us through a very concise history of the journey you made and the trajectory that it has set the whole TAJ administration. I'll come back to you shortly, but let me invite our other presenter, Geoff from Canada. Geoff, Canada Revenue Agency chose TADAT as the foundation piece for its own assessment of the CRA as a world-class administration. Could you kindly describe the experience and the extent to which it gave you insight as to the performance of the Canada Revenue Agency? Welcome, Geoff.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Duncan. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And also thanks to our colleague from Jamaica, Mr. Williams, for an excellent presentation. I'll do my best to follow that up. So I'll give you a little bit of background on our experience with the TADAT tool and how this came to be at the Canada Revenue Agency. It goes back to 2017 when our commissioner, Mr. Bob Hamilton, really challenged the agency to take a rigorous look at itself and to strive to be a world-class tax and benefits administration. So in the spring of that year, we launched the TADAT process with the intention of using the TADAT assessment really as the foundational piece for our considerations going forward. And we wanted to use the results of the TADAT assessment to complement some of the existing analysis and insights on our performance that we had already obtained from various sources, such as the Office of the Auditor General in Canada that conducts independent evaluations, as well as some of our own corporate research that we had done over the past number of years. We selected TADAT because it was an internationally recognized and an objective tool to assess the health of tax administrations according to common performance outcomes. And typically, TADAT experts will come to a tax administration to conduct the assessment. But in our case, we decided to train individuals within the CRA to become experts in the application of the tool. And the assessment was then reviewed by representatives from the TADAT Secretariat. We just thought it was important enough that we'd like to have some people in our organization that understood it and were experts as well. So something that we did that was a little bit different. So let's talk about some of the results, and it's always nice to start with what are the strengths. So the TADAT assessment results, they allowed the CRA to confirm certain areas of strength, and those included the following. I'll just go through them for you. The ability to gather, interpret, and use data from a range of business intelligence to understand compliance risks and inform our service and compliance efforts. So that was seen as a real strength. Our planning framework to mitigate corporate risks where we devote significant time and attention. The variety of service channels that we offer to Canadians to help them comply with their tax obligations. And that would include digital means, telephone conversations, all the ways that we reach out and meet with Canadians. The use of electronic filing and payment methods to facilitate the timely filing of tax returns and the timely payment of taxes, as well as our rigorous internal audit and internal affairs function, which we use, among other things, to monitor our own operations and ensure that our financial statements undergo extensive external oversight. So those were all some of the strengths that the TADAT assessment showed. But let's talk about some of the weaknesses as well, some of the areas where it was confirmed that the CRA could do better and seek to improve its performance. So the CRA did not always provide comprehensive upfront validation checks to ensure that business applications for registration were authentic. And obviously, this could have a negative impact on compliance activities later down the road. The CRA did not always provide timely access to information, and in particular through its telephone inquiry services. The age and the size of the CRA's outstanding tax debt continued to grow. So those are amounts we have not collected from taxpayers. The CRA did not always resolve taxpayers' disputes in a timely manner. It was also shown that there was a need for greater alignment of programs and activities to ensure that the agency could achieve its strategic priorities. And finally, there was also a need to strengthen how we measured performance, because if you can't measure something, it's difficult to know how you're doing. So that was also seen as a weakness. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of the examples in terms of the TADAT assessment. So prior to starting the TADAT process, we had already begun to identify and work on enhancement to our performance in certain areas. And the assessment we received through TADAT complemented and validated what the CRA knew through some of those other sources I talked about, such as external audits or public opinion research. And the assessment confirmed for the CRA that our planned work program and priorities were relevant and heading in the right direction. One of the first ones I'll talk about, the CRA committed and continues to be committed to breaking down internal silos to foster greater horizontality across the agency and to facilitate better service and compliance outcomes for Canadians. And that's pretty fundamental, just in terms of making sure that the agency works together. We're a very large organization, and it's really important that we work collectively and as a whole and in a cohesive manner. So we realigned some of our programs and activities, and we combined certain areas of work. So formerly, we had an international and large business investigations branch, as well as a domestic compliance programs branch. So we consolidated those into the compliance program branch as one example. We also committed to sharing decisions on objections and appeals process with the assessing and audit areas within the agency, so that the individuals doing those assessments and audits could improve how they worked on future files. So just making sure that we had an appropriate feedback loop within the agency to correct some of the issues that we had in that area. In addition, within Canada, there's been a significant priority placed on taking a broader, more horizontal approach, a whole of government approach, we call it, across federal government departments and agencies. And that's consistent with the CRA's efforts to support and enhance horizontality. And we're working to collaborate better with a number of government partners to advance work on key initiatives, such as the implementation of a real-time electronic payroll system and ensuring that businesses of all sizes benefit from this work. We've also focused our attention on transforming performance indicators to ensure that they are transparent, accurate, ambitious, and meaningful to Canadians. This also aligns with our vision to be trusted, fair, and helpful by putting people first. And I'll just give you a few examples there, some of the compliance indicators that we're using. So we're now using a service satisfaction index to measure Canadians' satisfaction with the services they receive from the CRA, as satisfaction in customer service is a great predictor of trust and in turn future compliance. We're also looking at the Public Perception Index of Trust, which measures Canadian taxpayers' trust in the CRA. We're looking at the percentage of Canadians who participate in the tax system and the number of individuals that are helped by our community volunteer income tax program. And that's a program where volunteers prepare income tax and benefit returns for eligible Canadians for free. So it's a great outreach tool to get more Canadians to help them comply with their obligations and also to make sure that they receive the benefits to which they are entitled. We have placed sustained focus on reducing the tax debt and improving client service in areas such as telephone inquiries and dispute resolutions, and we've made some pretty significant investments in these areas. So we are in the process of modernizing our telephone inquiries system in order to provide better timelines and better service to callers. We are using technology in new and innovative ways, looking at estimated wait times. We have an automated callback option now for people, and we have a chat bot available for certain functions online. And the goal there is to get information to people at the earliest opportunity to help resolve issues sooner rather than later. We're also working to support more timely resolution of disputes. We've introduced new service standards and process improvements, such as the use of web-based forms, file scanning, and greater sharing of information across the agency, again, working towards better horizontality. We're trying to improve our collection of outstanding debts. We've received new financial resources to do that. And we're using that support to take significant actions to detect, correct, and deter non-compliance, reinforcing strategic partnerships with key countries and organizations, and developing business intelligence tools to maximize the use of all available tax data. We've hired additional auditors and tax specialists to develop more robust business intelligence infrastructure. And we're helping to manage the collections inventory, increase our verification, and improve the quality of our investigative work targeting criminal tax evaders. And we're also continuing to advance initiatives in support of compliance, which also supports tax debt collection. And the CRA takes a tailored approach to compliance activities. We try to apply the right tool at the right time. We prioritize an education-first approach, and we try to help taxpayers by doing things such as sending them email reminders to let them know when their payments are due. So thanks for listening to those examples. I'll just take a little bit of time to provide some reflections on using the tool, because it's always important after undergoing the assessment to take a little bit of time to reflect. And I think for us, it was important to acknowledge that undergoing a voluntary independent evaluation can be a little bit of an uncomfortable idea sometimes for some agencies or departments. But we definitely felt that in our case, it demonstrated an openness and a willingness to learn and to evolve to better serve our clients' needs. And in addition to confirming a little bit about what we knew regarding our strengths and weaknesses, solidifying the call for change across the agency, participating in the assessment definitely allowed for greater awareness and engagement opportunities between the IMF, the TADAT Secretariat, and various parts of our own agency. So that was important for us. Overall, I think the detailed methodology of the TADAT assessment tool, it led to a really good objective assessment of how the CRA was performing in certain program areas, definitely identified areas for improvement, even if at times it may have been a bit challenging to determine how best to apply the information more broadly across the agency. So there may be situations where the tool points to poorer performance in some areas of downstream tax administration, such as appeals and tax debt, but it wasn't necessarily designed to get at the root cause of those symptoms from a systematic perspective. We felt there might have been a few gaps identified with using the tool, but many of those have been resolved since the time we underwent the assessment in 2017. Some of the things at the time we thought about was whether there was sufficient assessment in the area of human capital management, looking at innovation, as well as benefits administration, cybersecurity, and sometimes dealing with subnational governments. It's important to note, I think, that each country operates within its own unique environment and that the TADAT diagnostic tools seek to apply objective measures that are universally applicable. But I think there will always be some important country-specific differences that may affect the application of the tool and the overall assessment results. I think one of those areas, for example, we received a low score for timely payment of taxes or timeliness of payments, and that was because the CRA does not track on-time payment at the time we undertook the assessment. So our result there was low or unknown. Another point to note in the Canadian context, we didn't want to lose sight of other areas of strategic importance to the agency, such as people, human resource management, security, and innovation. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't omit those in the assessment. For example, to ensure the CRA's assessment as a world-class tax and benefit administration was objective and comprehensive, we developed an innovation assessment tool, which was examined by external subject matter experts from academia, other government departments, and the OECD, as one example of wanting to include some of those other factors. So just to say what was done well, because following the assessment, we asked for feedback from employees across the agency who had been involved in providing input. And some of the what we heard back from our people was that there was good engagement at the employee level across the agency, strong adherence to the TADAT model. The assessment was considered a creative and strategic approach to assessing complex concepts. Taking a top-down approach with respect to communication of the project. We had the commissioner and senior leaders across the agency actively providing information to employees, and the thought was that that was done quite well. Our communications approach and employee engagement was considered successful. The assessment was fully supported by the commissioner and by the CRA senior leadership. So those were some of the things that people indicated were done well. And then it's also important to look at what we could have done perhaps a little bit better. So this project team also provided feedback on what they felt might have been better. For example, given that the project relied on the CRA's internal resources to undertake its own self-assessment, it was remarked that it was a strength to engage employees who knew their programs very well, But we also recognize that could be a disadvantage in terms of employees that know their programs well may also be more likely to defend the existing way of working, and that could influence the outcomes of the analysis. The project team also suggested the CRA could have adjusted some of the non-applicable factors within the agency prior to conducting the assessment. So, for example, the issue of timeliness of payments, perhaps we should have adjusted that prior to taking the assessment. Another observation by the leads in our agency was that it would have been preferable to shorten some of the timeframes between the different steps of the assessment in order to maximize employee engagement so that you don't have to go back and re-engage periodically. And finally, it was also suggested that the CRA could encourage even greater involvement of employees throughout the process to ensure that they understood and supported the assessment results. So you can never do enough to encourage people to participate and show them the way for that. And with that, I will thank you for your attention and be happy to participate in the question and answer session. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Geoff, for that elaborate presentation. I think there's a good insight you've given us into how CRA navigated all this process of the assessment. And combining that now the two presentations, the one by Hank and yourself, I want to follow up on a few things. But just to start with, Hank, your position at the Tax Administration is very key because it's in the strategic operation of the entire administration. And Geoff, also borrowing from your long experience in tax administration, I want to ask, did the TADAT results surprise you, and did they validate some of what you suspected? And if so, could you elaborate? Maybe I start with Hank.
Okay, yes, thank you, Duncan. The 2015 report scores validated what we suspected, because at the time, Tax Administration of Jamaica was going through massive transition in terms of the implementation of a revenue administration system, for which we were moving from a legacy system into a new system. We were cutting over so the data was being transferred. So there were gaps in terms of the risking. There was also gap in terms of the matter of our filing rates. We were not able to accurately determine that as our payment rates. And again, the matter of audit and objections needed to be separated. And we saw that the whole matter of cross-matching and third party need to be addressed. And we could attest that we had a very large delay in terms of payment of VAT refunds, stock. So they weren't surprised. The 2021 findings, though, we were very happy for those, not surprised, because we put a lot of work in. We had on average, as I said earlier, a 69% increase in terms of the scores. Only 12% was constant. So we're very happy for that in terms of what we saw there. But the fact remains that we saw that we still had more work to be done. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Hank. Geoff, were there surprises pulled?
Yeah, thank you, Duncan.
Out of that assessment in 2017?
Thanks, Duncan. And, probably fair to say that I think the results from the TADAT assessment confirmed a lot of what we knew, because, we had certainly been looking at this through different lenses and other sorts of approaches over the year. So the positive side, I think it validated some of the areas where we knew we were doing well in terms of some of the important things we do as a tax administration. And it also confirmed some of the areas where we knew we had a weakness. And I think the good thing about any of these sort of objective external approaches is that it's a bit like, you look around your house and you have a few little projects you should really take care of. And then when your neighbor comes over and says, gosh, you haven't done that yet, the benefit of the tool is it really reminds you that you have to work on these. And so I don't think any of them were too surprising for us in terms of the areas that we needed to work on. It definitely confirmed some of the things we needed to do. And so it showed us the importance of service, of meeting the expectations of our clients, and of a few areas across the agency where we needed to collaborate better. So no surprises, but an excellent reminder and reinforcement of some of the work we needed to do. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Just following up on that, I know Jamaica has shared with us how they rated themselves on the second round of the assessment and how their score rating were. And Hank correctly pointed that 19% showed a decline. There was improvement of a whole 69%, almost 70%, with 12% remaining constant. But let me put it this way for my panelists. Hank, having looked at your both assessments, what conclusion did you draw from your low rate scores of D, C, and D? And did you find that they uncovered the issues that they had uncovered were more or less systemic in nature? Hank?
Yes, to be honest with you, those scores that we got for the D's and the C's, we could not provide the evidence to prove otherwise. They were justified, and they also, as you rightly said, there are some systemic issues that we need to address. For example, the matter of the VAT refunds, stock of arrears. And we had some areas of strength in terms of the organization. So the scores were ones that we took, and what we saw as the final conclusion to draw from it, that there is need for us to do more work. And those work is critical. And we need to start as of now, I would say now, in terms of ensuring that our next strategic planning cycle would capture these shortcomings and put initiatives in place to address them accordingly. Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you. Geoff, what about on your side? Did some of the challenges that the TADAT assessment unearthed showed some systemic lapse?
Yeah, thanks, Duncan. And so, in terms of the scores where we got a C or a D rather than an A or a B, I think we had about 6 of those. And those were definitely in line with areas that we had previously identified as weaknesses. And they are currently areas of focus in terms of improving our performance there. So one of the ones in particular where we received a score of D, supporting voluntary compliance, scope, currency, and accessibility of information. And that's because we have struggled to meet the standard for timely access to information through telephone inquiries, for example. And we knew this from previous work that the Office of the Auditor General had done with our agency, where they also identified deficiencies. But we put plans in place to improve our performance. We've actually made improvements over the past kind of 6 to 12 months as part of our most recent tax filing season. And so those strategies are paying off. So it's definitely, when you see those areas and a need for improvement, we're trying to make the efforts and the investments that we need to, recognizing that sometimes it takes a little bit of time to turn around the ship. And COVID, of course, the past couple of years has also created difficulties in terms of our ability to address some of these issues. But going forward, that is certainly the plan, to focus on them and to do what we need to do. Thanks, Duncan.
Many thanks, Geoff. We are also receiving input, some comments from our listeners across the globe. And this one goes to Hank. Hank, you, in your presentation, you correctly pointed out that getting the taxpayer registration base right was one of the critical foundation stone for all others to piggyback on. Could you just elaborate on this and get us to have the clear linkage of those areas?
Excellent. Well, thank you, Duncan. I also thank the panel, the person who have sent that to us. I think it's an excellent question. The Tax Administration of Jamaica, with the implementation of the revenue administration system, we were able to build into that modules that were able to capture third-party information. So that information, the information from a third party, which came by way of sales and other activities surrounding, and other business activities, we're able to match it against the returns that are filed to determine, for example, where there are persons who are conducting business for which are not registered. So I'll give a practical example. When we rolled out the system, we found 10,000 taxpayers who were utilizing the services of the public utility provider, but were not registered for taxes. We were able to register those businesses, and we have strengthened the risk model to be able to identify within it any taxpayer which is operating under the radar based on the agreements that would have put in place, for example, memorandum of understanding for sharing information, and we would have done sensitization sessions with our various third-party agents to get their buy-in in terms of sharing information. So that's the framework that we have used. And we have also been able to, in addition to new taxpayers, we have been able to treat the deregistering of taxpayers, for example, who are off the roll, and as well as the stop filers based on the programs that we have put in place. I hope that I've adjusted broadly the strategy. Duncan, thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Hank. Coming back to you, Geoff, there's an intervention here from one of our listeners from the Tax Academy UAE. And the question is, for the reform that the CRA engaged in as a result of the self-assessment, were they faced off approach, or how were they prioritized? If you could share with us. Geoff?
Yeah, Duncan, I'm just going to ask you to repeat the question. I'm sorry, Duncan, my audio was not great there for a moment.
Oh, okay, I'll repeat. We have one of our listeners from the Tax Academy of United Arab Emirates, and he's listened to some of the reforms that the CRA engaged in as a result of having done that assessment. And what he is asking, whether those reforms were on a phased approach and how they were prioritized versus other key priorities of the administration.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Duncan. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I think I would say, looking at what came out of the TADAT assessment and some of the key items that we needed to work on, we tried to integrate those with our overall strategic directive. So I think we wanted to make sure that we were pursuing improvements in areas where we had a strategy and a plan in place already. So for example, we knew that our service to Canadians could be improved, our ability to connect with them and to provide them with timely information. So we are doing that, I would say, through a phased approach in the sense that we're working on improving our telephone accessibility times. At the same time as we're working on telephones, we are improving the online educational materials that we have available to Canadians. And I mentioned some of the other things we're doing in terms of having a chat bot available. So we're trying to address them through multiple means and to make use of projects that we have underway already. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoff. And there's one audience with a question to Jamaica. And I think the question basically is that Jamaica has undergone 2 assessments under different TADAT framework, the old and the current. And the question is whether Jamaica has seen significant changes in terms of reading beyond the scores during those 2 assessments. Hank, could you address yourself to that?
Yes, we have seen significant need there for us to look beyond the scores. I think we have seen the instrument from the standpoint that we would have participate in the pilot in 2018 of the new instrument. And primarily what we took from it was the need that we need to look at areas in which we can continue to modernize our core operations. We also want to ensure that our service offering was of the highest quality and also to strengthen our whole management framework and also our governance arrangement, because we want to ensure that we continue a trajectory that we have set out to become a world-class tax administration. So in terms of this, the changes to the instrument, Jamaica was at a place where we were very familiar and we had put systems in place to treat with any slight modification. But we believe that the essence of it at the core is that we must look beyond the scores in terms of setting out a medium-term strategy to address what is required of us out of the assessments. Thank you for that question, and thank you, Duncan.
Thanks you once again, Han. We have an interesting question from Dominica, and it's one question that I wanted to pose. In terms of the challenges between the Jamaican Tax Administration and Canada Revenue Agency, two areas came out as challenges, and this is the outstanding debt and dispute resolution. Now, we have a caller here asking the strategies that you've used in addressing, especially the arrears, the tax arrears post-TADAT assessment. Okay, maybe I start with Geoff.
Great, thank you, Duncan. And those are two really good areas to talk about a little bit, because they can both be obviously quite challenging. So dispute resolution, at the Canada Revenue Agency, we use what we call an objection procedure in-house, whereby any taxpayer can object to their assessment and receive a second review from the Canada Revenue Agency before they proceed to a more legalistic approach through the courts. And we've done a lot of work over the years to look at the best way to address these workloads in terms of trying to reduce turnaround times for taxpayers. One of the approaches we use is to look at work in terms of complexity level, so that we have appropriate resources looking at the types of objections that are raised, so that we can sort of deal with them more effectively, understanding various subject matters or common areas where they arise together, for example, again, with a view to achieving greater efficiencies. And I don't want to go too long on any of these, sorry, so I'm giving you a really condensed version. And then the collection of tax arrears or tax debt, also another challenging area, to be sure. One of the key things here is communicating with individuals early in the process, because as we all know, it is much easier to collect a debt earlier rather than later. So again, timeliness is important in the area of managing tax debt collection. So early communication, early intervention, and obviously trying to avoid the situation where debt continues to accumulate. So those are some of the key things that I'll leave room for my colleague to speak as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Geoff. Any input from Jamaica on that?
Yes, thank you, Duncan. And I join with Jeff that this is a very difficult one. We have struggled with these two matters across two TADAT assessments. I'll start first with the VAT refunds. VAT refund has been a challenge for us, especially given the fact that we would have gone through COVID. I know that the measures that have put in place for us to look at suspending payment of VAT refund to allow for the expenditure side of the budget to be able to ease in terms of the subsidies and other relief in that regard. So we are very mindful of that. But we're also cognizant of the fact that the VAT refunds, that we have to make some changes legislatively in terms of the interest. That is, the interest that is accrued to outstanding payments. We also need to look at better management in terms of the way in which we risk the refunds, given that we have an idea of, to a large extent, of the extent of the refunds, and also to better manage the ceiling that we get. And in terms of the the matter of the dispute resolution. We have done a lot there. As I indicated earlier, we have separated the objections from the audit function, with the objections reporting directly to the commissioner. We have recently received the approval from the Ministry of Finance for the post to have someone in direct oversight there, and also to staff out that section. We have also looked within the matter of the revenue admission system to put a system to deal with the best judgment, which is one of the challenges that we have, assessment and estimated assessments, to deal with those, that we can bring down the stock in terms of the dispute resolution side of it. And again, we'll continue to work with our partners in the revenue appeal to help us in that regard. So I know it's a challenging area, but these are some of the measures that we have put in place from Jamaica's standpoint to address this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Hank. I think because we are also running out of time and there are intervention flowing through, but one more critical one that we can't let go. In Geoff's presentation, he post TADAT, he said that they've now entrenching horizontality across all services and function. And our caller wanted to find out how this has impacted on the general improvement in revenue administration, and what are the strategies? Is it a strategy that they want to keep going forward, and how? So Geoff, it's a mouthful, but I hope you can give us just a glimpse, if you don't mind, very quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. And that is a big question. But horizontality, as I mentioned, it's just making sure that the different parts of the agency talk to one another. And so I'll give a quick example. Within my part of the Canada Revenue Agency, there's a group of income tax experts that provide advanced rulings on transactions. And that's with a view to providing certainty to taxpayers, where if they come in with a set of facts, and they stick to that set of facts, and we will give them a ruling on the tax implications of a particular transaction. It's important then that we have that dialogue with our colleagues in the compliance side of the agency, so that we share a common understanding of the law and its appropriate application. And that's one example of the horizontal approach, where the left hand and the right hand are in agreement and know what they're doing, so that we've got consistency between how we treat a taxpayer sort of pre and post transaction. So that horizontality, making sure that people talk to each other, similar considerations in the GST. I know Hank has talked about that as well, the VAT, we call it the goods and services tax in Canada, making sure that we have consistency in terms of our interpretation, our communications with taxpayers, and then our follow-up on the compliance side. So that's just sort of one example of the horizontal approach we're trying to put in place. Thanks, Duncan.
Thanks so much, Geoff. We had one of our audience joining us live, Mr. Abdul Hamid, who has a question to put. I'll give you the floor, Abdul, just to put across your question or intervention.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for allowing me to pose the question to the gentleman from Jamaica and Canada Revenue. I have 2 points, really. The first question is, when you're applying the TADAT process, how did you meet any resistance, or how did you overcome the culture that as a tax agency, a tax collection agency, you are more of a applying the law? And all these points about, tax dispute resolution processes and getting things done efficiently, was there any resistance from the staff in adapting to that? And how were you able to overcome it? By communicating, by training your staff on it so that they would accept it? And the second point on the tax dispute resolution, any strategies adopted by you in order to work before an issue becomes a dispute? Was there any revision in the audit methodologies adopted by the tax offices when they are auditing taxpayers? These are the 2 points I have. I'd be happy to hear from the gentleman from Jamaica and Canada.
Okay. Thanks. Could we start with Hank? And I think maybe very briefly, perhaps elaborate response we can provide in the chat in the interest of time. So Hank.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you very much, Hamid, for that question. I will say that tax administration did not suffer the challenge of resistance. I must say that on record that the Commissioner General took the leadership from day one to allow for the assessments to be done, where the senior management team being a part of it. We included the persons from different areas. So again, it was a all of organization approach. All the different business areas were brought in. Persons could see themselves in the assessment, and also the meetings were kept with the different managers, line managers, and their support team to have the discussion so they could see where is it that they are performing well or not, and also to provide the evidence to support their findings. In terms of the matter of the dispute resolution, the areas I indicated, most of our challenges were with the automated assessments, and we are putting systems in place to treat with those in terms of ensuring that when the taxpayers engage us, they are very much clear in terms of the objection process. And our intent is that we can reduce the stock in that way to reduce the level of dispute. And the team that we have put in place, I know that the chief who manages that area is basically building out a work plan now to ensure that that area functions effectively and efficiently. And I believe that the whole matter of planning is what is critical, as well as to have an open approach to allow for taxpayers. We have also gone to the length too of having what we call a citizens charter, so persons are aware of their rights. We have also done training on the audit side to make it easier that whatever assessments are raised are in keeping and within the context of the law. Hope I have provided general answers to support. Yes, thank you very much, Amit.
Thank you very much.
Geoff, your intervention?
Great, thank you. And very quickly, I think in terms of buy-in to the TADAT process, one of the key things we did was we had a good discussion at the senior management table before launching the process to make sure that everyone was on board and saw the value in it, so that when we went back to our parts of the organization, we could really sell it to people as a great opportunity to have a new tool looking at the operations and potentially highlighting some of the areas for improvement and for strength as well. And generally, folks are open to that. They want to do better. They want to have better engagements with Canadian tax filers, and they want the system to work as well as it can. So I think we've got a dedicated and a committed workforce, and they're not afraid of these types of things. They see them as an opportunity in most ways. And quickly then on dispute resolution, I would echo some of the comments. I think one of the key things we've done on the compliance side, working with businesses and individuals, is to make our audit process more transparent, to improve our service to clients. So even when we are out auditing someone, we want it to be a positive service experience where we explain what we are doing and why we are doing it, so that even if we get to a result that the taxpayer might not like, they at least understand how we got there. And we find that has been a positive approach to minimizing disputes further down the road. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Many thanks, Geoff. I think we are drawing to a close, but before we log off, there just one question that I would wish to pose to the two of you. Looking at your experiences and the results which have come out of TADAT, two assessments for Jamaica, one assessment for Canada, do you think, in your view, you'll be able to recommend the assessment to other countries, and especially Canada, your counterpart, the other developed advanced administration? Would you think you'd recommend this tool even for those advanced administration? Canada, very quickly, 1 second, and then Jamaica.
Thanks, Duncan. No pressure. Thank you.
Yes.
We thought it was a good process for us. And I just, I never want to speak for other countries, but I do think it's a positive tool. I know there are other tools out there as well. There's some other models that can be looked at. And the important thing, I think, is just to make sure to look at it and assess your willingness to commit and to see it through for any of these projects, right? If you're going to take it on, make sure you've got buy-in and make sure you're willing to take the whole process underway. But it was a positive experience for us. Thank you.
Thanks. William, Hank, your take?
Yes, I will join Jeff to say that it's really a very good tool, and I would definitely recommend it to countries. I believe that it provides the objective framework for the objective assessment, and also to look at areas that need to be strengthened. And most importantly, in my interaction over the last 2 assessments, I have high regards for the skill and the high professionalism that has been displayed by the staff in the Secretariat and those persons on the mission. I believe that these are high quality individuals that can only help but to strengthen the function and the operation of any tax administration. So I say that TADAT is the way to go, beyond the scores, for better tax administration.
I couldn't have said it more, much better. Dear audience, that brings us to the end of our conversation today. It's an ongoing conversation, and we'd like to engage with you on this journey. So I would return the meeting briefly to our moderator of the day, Annette, quickly to log us off. Annette, over to you.
Duncan, thank you very much for handing over the mic. Thank you so much for joining us today and hosting today's very important episode. I'd also like to thank you, Hank, and you, Jeff, for taking the time from your very busy schedules and sharing this wonderful experience that you had with the TADAT tool. It was a pleasure to hear from you, to learn from you about your experiences. Thank you so much. And we hope we can have you join us one more time sometime in the future in the podcasts. Always a pleasure to hear from you.
Okay, thank you. The privilege was mine. And thanks also to the excellent moderator and the team who would have ensured that this took place. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and really appreciate the venue to have this approach. And I'm going to thank my team as well that did some great work preparing these. So thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
One last thank you for our audiences joining us today. Thank you so much. We'd like to invite you to join us next week on June 22nd at 10 a.m. We're going to have a discussion between the World Bank, IADB, and SIAT, and we'll have some representatives from each organization sharing with us their experiences and how they're collaborating in the region and how TADAT can help tax administrations in the region achieve their reform goals. Also, would like to remind you, if you'd like to join our TADAT Connect community, please reach out to us at secretariat@tadat.org. Our new TADAT Connect chat interactive group is now open, where people can join, tax officials from around the world, as well as capacity development partners from around the world can join and query and ask questions and discuss hot topics and issues that are occurring within your tax administrations. It's an excellent way of knowledge sharing and gathering information from other colleagues from around the world. And we're also debuting our TADAT search engine. Best way to keep in touch with us is to like us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So thanks again and have a great day.
Bye.